Welcome to a Superbloom podcast. My name is Candice King, and we are talking about my favorite subject in the entire world today, television. I love television. This is a love affair that has been happening for a very long time in my life, really from the get-go. If you listen to this podcast, if you've listened to it from the very beginning, you know that I talk about TV a lot and my love of television. I have actually highlighted in many of these openers about various TV shows and actors and writers that have really made a huge impact in my life just from me sitting down in front of the big blue box and being captivated and taken away to another world. You know, a beautiful form of escapism for some, and for me, it's just really a lifestyle. Just being a TV fan is a lifestyle. I miss the water cooler days of talking. I miss the days when you could just go every single week and know that there would be an episode of television that you could anticipate and look forward to. And you got to just like eat a piecemeal, like one bite at a time. And it would last throughout the whole year. And it would just build this anticipation to the season finale. I miss those days. The binging style is really tough for me, but you know, beggars can't be choosers, and I beg for as much TV as possible. I love TV. We are in a very committed relationship, and that's why I am also very supportive of what's happening in television right now, because I love good TV, and in order to have good TV, we need writers. That is the root of all good television. And let me tell you, this is coming from an actor. I think writers are the coolest people in the entire world. I have many friends that are writers, and my favorite place besides sitting in front of a TV screen is sitting at a dinner table with writers whom I love and adore and respect, and just hearing them talk about the business and what they do and storytelling. So that's what we get to do today. I'm so excited. And if you're wondering, what, Candice, record scratch, what do you mean writer's strike? What does that mean? Well, we're going to get into that today too. The last time there was a writer's strike was in about 2007, 2008. Maybe your memory will be jogged by some of the things that we discussed today, but a really infamous moment was just Conan spinning his wedding ring on television because there were no writers. The writers went on strike for very important reasons, which they are striking again for just as many, if not more important reasons today. And we are going to hear about all of that from a writer because he will explain it way better than I can. I have been really looking forward to this episode. I have been a fan of Dan Perlman's work. I am sad to say that we can't necessarily watch it right now. And we're going to get into why that is as well. But if you just heard Dan Perlman and you don't know who that is, let me tell you about Dan. Dan Perlman is a comedian, a writer, and a director from New York City. He is the co-creator, writer, star of Showtime's critically acclaimed comedy series, Flatbush Misdemeanors, which you can't see right now on Showtime. We're going to talk about it, but Dan is posting tons of clips from it on his social media. So if you listen to this episode, you want to know more about Dan, or you want to watch parts of the show, which is now what I've been left to do, just head over to his Instagram. His handle is @DanJPerlman. Dan is also a stand-up comedian. He's been featured on Comedy Central and was named one of the new faces at the Montreal Just for Laughs Festival. He's a regular at the famed Comedy Cellar in NYC. That is short for New York City for anyone like me who's from Florida. And it's just like NYC. No, I'm kidding. Take that part out, Mel. See, I'm not funny. Mel, you might have to, this is what happens. I'm like anticipating, comedian coming on, and I'm like, this will be funny. Too much. I'm leaning too much on Florida, and now I'm just tearing myself down in all my comedy chops. So please, delete this, Mel, or leave it in and just let me completely bomb on this mic, which we're also going to talk about in today's episode, the importance of bombing on stage. And now I just get to do it here. All right, moving on. If you do live in New York City, Dan has a show at Sesh Comedy on May 30th. So go check that out. That is coming up. And, without further ado, let's just jump into it. Let's just dive in. Let's just dive into this conversation with Dan Perlman.
my cat might make a cameo at some point. She tends to run on all Zooms. So
What's your cat's name?
Crimmins.
Crimmins.
Yeah, I'll call her Crim.
What is Crimmins in reference to? I feel like, is this like a character that I should know from pop culture or like history or some
No,
highbrow book?
no eyebrow book. uh,
This is
no,
from a novel.
yeah, yeah. It's what? Oh, you haven't read Proust? No, it's no. There was this old like very grumpy Boston comedian named Barry Crimmins, who's like a very, very sweet guy. There's this Netflix documentary about him called Call Me Lucky,
Hmm.
about his life. And he ended up being like a big like activist and doing a lot of great stuff to like protect kids and like child porn on the internet, like doing a lot of like really great active stuff. Anyway, he was always very, very sweet to me and told me I should get a cat, and he passed away a few years ago. But there was something nice about the idea of this very grumpy old man like living on in this cute little kitten. You know,
Is Crimmins still a cute little kitten, or has he turned into a grumpy old man?
she definitely has it in her to to be grumpy, but right now she's only about a year and change, so she's definitely hyper. She plays fetch like all the time, which I guess some cats do. She's obsessed with fetch.
I don't know if
Um,
cats do that or people that have cats just decide that their cat does it. Because I feel like that's what I usually hear from anyone who has a cat.
he
They're like,
just
my cat's like a dog. That's what I normally, from all my friends that have a cat, they're like, no, but this cat's
I,
different.
I
It
would
plays fetch.
I I promise I am not I did not like intend to do this, but I would love to not play fetch with her anymore because but every moment she will find a wristband or any kind of uh, rubber band or anything and just nudge it up to me and just beg me to throw it and just like nudge it closer and closer until I will finally go throw it and then chase it across the room, you know?
Well, you have your cat Crimmins, and then back to the comedian Crimmins.
Yes,
Was that someone that you had followed even as you were younger when you were interested in comedy? Have you always wanted to be a comedian? Was this like, everyone's in class saying, I want to be, the president or a firefighter, and you're like, comedian?
definitely. I definitely always wanted to be a comedian. Um, well, I wanted to be in the NBA. That was my first dream. But then I found out it was going to be too short. I went to a doctor and he was like, "You're going to be too short." He was like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, I'd love to be in the NBA." And he like looked at my chart and he's like, "You're going to be too short." And I just started crying and just cried and I cried and I
How
cried and I
old were
cried.
you?
Or like seven, I don't know. Yeah. So then I turned 8 and I was already like jaded. But then I found comedy and that seemed so fun. And there's no height requirements for that. So
No.
so that was always, yeah, it was always a thing I was into, but I was very shy. I was very introverted. So I would like write, jokes in just notebooks and I wouldn't share them with anybody and just hide them under my bed. I was very, very quiet, but I liked joke writing and I liked the idea of doing stand up, but I was not the class clown. I would quietly whisper one joke to a friend rather than loudly stand up and say a thing, you know?
Is that, I mean, I wouldn't even know what joke writing was as a kid. Is that something, do you think it's like an element of growing up in New York? It's just like a hub of so many, like live performances, especially comedy?
Maybe. I don't know. Where did you grow up?
Florida.
In Florida? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess I kind of feel like, I mean, I was growing up in New York, but you're not even like really hyper aware of that relative to the rest of the world. You're just like, your,
I
your,
mean, I
your
grew up
experience can
knowing
always be
all
like,
of like Jimmy Buffett songs. Like
right,
that was my
right,
schooling. So the fact that you're like,
right.
I was, experimenting with joke writing, and passing along to my friends.
No, no, I don't know. I think my parents, uh, for all the flaws and damage that gets done. One thing that I'm very grateful to them for is they exposed me to a lot of cool stuff, and among that was stand up. And so we had like a huge CD collection, and so I would just listen to these stand up albums over and over. So that was how I found it initially, and there was this Seinfeld documentary comedian that came out in like, I don't know, it was like 2002 or something. So I was like pretty young, but I saw it and I watched it over and over because he was like, it was like he'd already done the sitcom and then he's like coming back and trying to write new material and he's just going in at clubs and stuff like that. And so that was cool because you could see like, oh, there's like a process to this. And some guys just do it. Like it's not just a thing where, you know, when you're a kid and you're looking at people doing a thing, they're just the most famous people in the world. And it feels like you're like, how do they even get to that place? Like there's no,
Mm-hmm.
but once you learn, oh, there is some kind of track or pathway or something you can like work at in some world where there are comedians who are just doing it, who are not famous, who nobody really knows, but they're just like working at it. And that's in some ways more inspiring than like looking at the most famous people because you're like, oh, there's like a path here and there's like, this is like a world that exists, you know, instead of just this like these Mount Rushmore of people, you know?
Well, and also, I think that it's very known then in the world and comedy, it does not happen overnight. It is night after night after night after night, years and hours, and it is not, and it's a grind, a whole different grind that where part of that grind is just bombing and failing, and you have to because that's the only way you actually improve your set. What was your first set? How old were you? Where was it?
So my first set, which I did not continue, but my first set, I got on stage at some open mic when I was like 14 or 15 and was just totally stared at. It was not a school thing or whatever. So it's just these like older, jaded open micers, you know?
Were you at like a nightclub?
Yeah, it was like some bar. I don't know. It was some, I don't know, remember why they let me in. I think they just didn't care. And I went up and they just totally, there was no like, oh, let's be nice to this kid or whatever. It was just like, we don't care. Go away. Get out of here. I was totally, I was totally scared off it. In my head, I was always like, I'll do it again, but I didn't. But I didn't until I went to college. I went to Northwestern, and so I would go into Chicago and start to do stand up there at open mics. But it's totally what you just said. You just go and you bomb and get stared at. But you can kind of feel it's fun because there is a community of other people doing it, you know, and so you find just like in school or anything, you find those people who you're kind of like minded or you think they're funny too. And then in that early stage, you can like you can feel yourself getting better in a way that's exciting, you know, like you can, because when you start, you're so bad, you know, and so you can feel that incremental progress in a way that is a little more like, it's just more noticeable to you, you know?
Well, I mean, I would assume like like how you know you're getting better too is people are laughing more when you're performing your set. Or no, is it just like you start to recognize like you just pick apart certain parts from a set and then end up puzzle like putting those puzzle pieces together later? Is that the
The, the puzzle piece thing is 100% like a huge part of it in a way that you feel yourself getting better. I mean, I think a big thing is like, I don't know. I always feel like it's very much like when you start, it's very much like you're just kind of like a baby. Like you're not really aware of like your surroundings or anything. You're just kind of like saying words and you're not aware of how the audience is responding. You're not aware of how to be present and you're not aware of how to like balance that presence with the material or how to, you know, there's like 1 million aspects to it. Like
Mhm.
I took boxing. I'm not good at it, but I took it for a minute and, you know, you learn like it's not just the punches you throw, but it's like every part of your body, like how your toes are angled and like where you keep your hands when you're not there. And like every part of it also factors in to stand up as well. So a big part of it, yes, it's them laughing, but also you're just being more aware and more present throughout the whole thing, you know, because there's still going to be times it does not go well, but you're more aware of what you're doing in each step, you know, you become more awake.
What did you study at Northwestern?
I studied education and social policy. There's a school of education and social policy there. And so like I wanted to do comedy and write, but I thought if I didn't have the courage to do it, then maybe I would just like teach because I did a lot of teaching, tutoring, like volunteer stuff when I was a teenager and enjoyed doing it. I don't know. I think a lot of that comes probably from like, I guess mindset as a teenager was like a lot of it came from like low self-esteem, where it's like that volunteering stuff felt good because it's like you felt like, all right, well, I guess here's something I'm like leaving a little better than I found it, because without me, it would just be an empty void, so at least I can try to be there and help a little bit. So anyway, so I did that. But then I was going into Chicago and doing stand up, and I was in a film. All my friends were film, and we were in a sketch writing group, and we wrote and shot a billion bad sketches. So that was like the community of people that I was in. But then on the Flatbush, on the TV show I made, I played a bad teacher. That was kind of how I envisioned. That's who I would have been had I not done comedy, just like a failing teacher, just trying, but just like demonstrably out of his depths.
Well, it doesn't sound like that from all the work you did as a kid. I mean, it is. That's not how a lot of kids think. I did not think like that at all. I mean, I keep saying, just watching this generation right now of high school students and what they've been through, not only in the last couple of years, but just like the fact that like they live in a reality of doing active shooter drills, and that's not something our generation dealt with. And
no, not
and
at
they're
all.
like out there marching and fighting for their rights. And again, I was just singing Jimmy Buffett and Backstreet Boys, and
Did you like Backstreet Boys more than NSYNC?
yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did.
Because
I did too. Yeah,
I like the underdog, and I felt like they were the underdog. And that's also
were
a
they
very
the
good
underdog?
documentary.
Yeah.
I think that they were. Yes, they
Okay.
were like,
Yes,
because they
I
were
liked.
the OGs, and then
I
NSYNC
liked
came
them more
in.
also. Yes,
I mean, they're still together now.
they're still
It's
touring.
really,
Yes.
yet they're still touring. They've just really come out on top. I could do a whole other hour just on the Backstreet Boys.
I'll come back. We'll do a Backstreet episode.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I want to get to obviously Flatbush misdemeanors because I'm so mad it cannot be streamed anywhere. I don't understand it. I'm sure we'll get to why that is, because I just started it and then it went away. So part of me is like, welcome, I need you to perform all 2 seasons. So because I can't get
I
it
know.
anywhere.
I know all the lines, so I could do it. Not as well as some of the other characters, but yeah.
When did you move back to New York then? When did you meet Kevin Iso? How, because we'll get into like the conception of it, but how did you get back to New York then?
I moved back once I graduated in 2012, and started going and bombing at open mics, and it was, did multiple open mics a night and was stared at every place you could be stared at, and then wanted to keep uh, writing and filming other stuff. And so Kevin was just a guy I met at open mics and shared a drive to make stuff, even if it wasn't great, which is kind of what you need. Just that same willingness to fail in a different area than stand up, just to fail across the board with me.
Yep. Something's got to stick eventually.
Something will, or you just get better at it. So then we just made a million sketches back in New York, because New York's like definitely the place to be for stand up, because you can just get on stage so much. And I think some people are more comfortable writing up front, and the performing has to catch up. And then some people are more comfortable performing, and then maybe the writing has to catch up. And then the best people are great at both. And then the majority are good at neither, it's like how anything is. So I definitely had to catch up in the performing, so that's why I just wanted to do it a lot in the city and just kind of get better at it. So yeah, we started shooting these sketches, and we made like, I don't know, like 16, 17, 18, like one a week, and just put them all out. And most of them are not online. Most of them are just like very bad, but kind of got better at it. And then I wrote an animated pilot for that ended up selling to Fox. That was like the first like half hour thing I wrote. And so just kind of learned the whole like TV development-y side of it. And then it didn't go to series. This is probably like 2016. And then we just wanted to like make something, because, you go through those steps of a pilot and you clear these steps and hurdles and everything. And then if it doesn't go to series, nobody sees the thing. So it was like, I just want to like make something and put it out there. And even if 50 people see it, it'll just exist, And so that was what Flatbush came from, of like, I came back to New York and was like, just want to like shoot something and just put it up there. And that became like a month later, started shooting Flatbush, so made it as a short initially.
But so Moderately Funny was the web series, the
Yes.
clips that you did. That's not what
Yes.
became Flatbush, right?
No, it sort of became it in terms of like that's when we started working with some comedians who we ended up using in Flatbush, like Kareem Green, who plays my stepdad in the show. Like we worked with him, and it was just fun to work with him. Like so, we did some sketch where he's just yelling at me, and so then we were writing Flatbush. I was like, I just want Kareem to yell at me again, so we just wrote him as my stepdad because I was like that would just be funny if he's like giving me advice or whatever, you know. So so that helped because then you just find the people who you vibe with, who you like working with, who might not even be your uh, close friends or whatever, but you just the energies kind of match. It's just a good sort of pairing of energies.
When you were conceptualizing the what would become like the short pre Flatbush being picked up, it was 15 minutes, right? Was the short
Yes.
about?
Yeah, it was. We'd initially written it as a pilot. It was like a 35-page pilot, and then we showed it to. We barely knew anybody, but we showed it to a couple people, and they were like, "I don't really know what this is. I don't really see it, whatever." And so, and I think that's probably a common response. So we were like, "All right, well, let's just make it." And so then we just ripped out anything that would be budget. So we were left with 15 pages of just kind of scraps and shot it piecemeal and borrowed friends' cameras. And I remember we bribed a janitor on a Saturday to let us into a school so we could shoot in the school. And then he was like, "Okay, but you have to use my kid. My kid wants to be in it." And his kid was like this 10-year-old who looked totally insane. So we just shot him in the corner so we could cut him out. I felt totally bad doing that. But we were just like, it's like this is like crazy.
That janitor's like going to all the festivals, being like, "No, Timmy!"
He's like, "Why would they?"
Damn
I'm
it!
like, I like totally forgot we did that for a while. I was like, "Oh yeah, we did totally." Like, yeah, no, it's perfect because then we'll just like pan through or like never just crop them off. Yeah. But no, we were just stealing shots. We had no permits. Just totally rushed, scrapped together, begged people in delis to let us shoot, behind the counter for a second, just like scrapped our way to get it done. But I think that stuff helps. I think that sort of like lack of budget, infrastructure, whatever, always like forces us to be more creative.
Yeah.
I think so much of that comes from just necessity of like, how do I get this done? And that's why then when we see people whose movies we loved, their early movies, then we see their later ones, and they're often bloated and bad, and nobody's saying no to them, and it's 4.5 hours, and it's just like an excess. So, but when it's a little more like when it's a struggle to get the thing through, I think that's where a lot of the coolest shit comes in.
Was it called Flatbush Misdemeanors at that time? The
Mm-hmm.
short?
Mm-hmm.
What was the timeline between showing Flatbush at festivals to it being you getting the phone call, it's picked up, it's going to series?
I think premiered it at a festival in like summer fall 2017, and then it had a festival run for like about a year until like I want to say like September 2018, and then that got the attention of production companies, and then we started working with a production company late 2018, and then pitched it to networks early 2019, and we were lucky to get a few. I think we had 4 offers of the 6 we pitched to, and then started working with Showtime, and then literally it was September 2020 that we got picked up to series. So a year and a half. A year and a half from when Showtime said we're going to make an offer. So we had a 2-script to series deal. So we didn't have to shoot the pilot, just 2 scripts, and that whole process took a year and a half. So it was like,
Man.
peak COVID when we got picked up. So it was crazy because you went from like doing nothing, like seeing nobody and just complete trapped in our homes to like, okay, now you're going to have to like run, and you have 12 or 13 weeks to get a whole season together, and then we were on the
And
air, and we
during
were picked up.
COVID, like,
Yeah.
and filming within that period of time, which is so expensive like so stressful, all the restrictions and regulations, and also first time show running and starring and writing and heading a writer's room. Like
Yes.
you really got the you were just like, I'm just gonna cannonball right into the ocean. Just drop me
I mean,
out way out there.
the thing that helped was not really knowing what is normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like in in school you'd got like in class essays. Like I always liked those more because you just had to vomit some words out without questioning. Like if they give you all the time in the world to take it home, I was just gonna like dick around for 3 months and not do it. But then when they're just like, you have 45 minutes, just do it. You're like, okay, fine, and you just spit it out. So it was kind of like that energy a little bit, but I was definitely insanely fried by the end of it. And the biggest thing for the COVID was like not um, because it was before people were vaccinated. Also, we shot
Yeah.
March. It was like February, March to May 2021. So people were just starting to get vaccinated. But so I couldn't really go out and see other people. So you're just so in the throes of, and we premiered May 2021. We wrapped May 8th, 2021 and premiered on the 23rd. Like it was
Which
crazy,
is insane.
crazy.
That's yeah. Yeah.
I think we had to like deliver the first 3 episodes like for press, like while we were shooting block 2. We had to like have block 1 finished, like as we were prepping block 3. Like it was something completely like, why do this to ourselves? This is like
Yeah.
crazy. But
Yeah.
I got it
I
done and then I collapsed.
I feel like at the end of any like tour or like season of a TV show, that's when like everyone gets sick. Like everyone drops down with some
Yes.
sort of virus at the end of it. It's just the come
And
down.
do you feel this when you like finish like a long project? It's like when you go from having to do like a million things to then having to do like 2 or 3 things, it makes it, I feel it's so much harder for me to do those 2 or 3 things, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Yeah.
Like I've just been doing way more stuff at every second of every day. Somebody needed me to do a thing. And then the next day, like I just had to meet one person at 2 p.m. on Zoom, and they're like, "You forgot." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it." It was like the easiest thing in the world. You just ran a full marathon, and they're like, "Can you walk to the corner?" And you're like, "I can't walk to the corner. That's crazy. No chance."
Did you still do any stand up during the well, no, because I guess it was COVID, but have you like
It was
even
COVID.
during season 2, the filming of season 2, were you doing any stand up or did you have any like energy to do any of that or
I
time?
really, I really didn't. Like in between seasons 1 and 2, I did, um, and that was my first time, I guess, really doing it since COVID, because I went straight from COVID to shooting, and then between seasons 1 and 2, I started doing shows again, and I did some thing for Comedy Central, some set, and some other stuff like that. But then it was only that, yeah. Once we started season 2, I was like, oh, maybe I could try while writing. And then very quickly, like, I think one week I had like 5 spots and I just canceled all of them. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah,
Like, I can't. I would
it's too
love to
much.
do both, but I can't do both. But then once we finished filming, then I started going up at the Cellar a lot, and the Comedy Cellar in New York, and some other places. And I'll alternate between going up a lot and then needing a break so it can still be fun, and then going back.
For anyone, I know that you're posting clips of the show on your socials right now. In the anticipation that it will be streamable at some point, like I don't know the politics of that, but could you share with our listeners a little bit about like what the show was about? Obviously, it took place in the area of Flatbush in New York. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
talked about how you were a degenerate teacher of sorts.
Degenerate.
Or is that just my spin on it? No.
It's just a very funny word. Um, yeah, so it's set in Flatbush, Brooklyn. The show is called Flatbush Misdemeanors. It was a comedy on Showtime. It's centered on my character's name is Dan, as is mine. So Dan Joseph is the character, and he's a shitty public school teacher in Flatbush with Xanax addiction, and he has a friend, Kevin, who is like an old childhood friend, and he delivers food in the first season. So in the first season, basically, Kevin knocks over food delivery for this drug dealer played by Hassan Johnson, who people might know from The Wire and Clockers and a lot of great stuff he's been in. Basically, we get tangled up into Hassan's orbit, and his niece also happens to be in my character's class. So there's a lot of crisscrossing and small world, and so they're just kind of, it's like a lot of like day to day sort of comedy, but very joke dense, and it's like single cam grounded, but also like high stakes. I don't know. Yeah, I was very proud of. It's a weird show to describe, so I was always very impressed with the Showtime like marketing people, because I would be like, man, I would have no idea how to market or explain this show to people. But yeah, so it's just they're just kind of living in Flatbush and trying to avoid Hassan beating up my guy, and they just keep bumping into each other and stepping on each other, and that's kind of how I think of New York.
Did you and Kevin live in Flatbush for a period of time, or did I maybe misread or hear that? Okay.
Yeah, we did not together, but yeah, I lived in Flatbush for three and a half years. Really, just great area. It's sort of like south of Prospect Park, and it's a very cool. It very much feels like its own place, like an island on an island, and it's a largely Caribbean neighborhood, and it's one of those like neighborhoods where you can go 2 blocks in any direction and feel like you're in a very different world. You can find a lot of T-shaped streets and like old architecture, and then you can find a street with a bunch of dollar stores, and so it's nice when you can, in this very compressed setting, feel like you're immersed in a lot of different worlds, but everyone is just kind of like blended together, and so that just feels like a very cool, fun setting for a show where you just have a lot of different people just organically thrown together.
And it's a fantastic setting for a show, and a show that was also like critically acclaimed. I mean, just so many wonderful things said about it. I know it's like the not fun part of the conversation, but I mean, everything that I was reading and seeing was very promising of a season 3. Was that something that was completely caught off guard? Or if it's something political you can't really get into, that's fine too.
It was not unexpected.
Okay.
I saw it coming for, as I'm sure there's always 1 million other reasons beyond,
Yes.
Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes.
But
Yes.
so I was not shocked. I had a great experience with it. I loved. I don't know. I felt like incredibly fortunate to have gotten to make that show, and like you said, just kind of got thrown into a lot of these roles that I had never done before, and then getting through that on such a time crunch, and then getting to do a second season where you just feel very like, you just learn so much from season to season. You figure out how to write for the different. Now which actors are playing these characters, and you can write for them better, and you feel more comfortable yourself doing it. And I got to direct in the second season also, and it was just like all these. I mean, it was just like, yeah, incredible. And you work with all the different departments and seeing how good they are, like, and how specific they are makes your writing better in a way. It's like, no, it was just a really, really great experience, and I'm happy to tell you offline all the dirt behind it. But
no, but to what you're saying, like, I know like I have a very unique experience of really only, like, my biggest job ended up lasting a very long time. So all I
right.
know is serialized television. Like, that's it. So
Sure.
for me, I'm like, yeah, doesn't every show go for like 8 seasons, 9 months out of the year? Like, that's the norm, right? And it's not normal at all.
For sure.
But it like something that I do appreciate about being on at least like a series is that it becomes this playground of creativity, like exactly to what you're saying. You get to know the other players in the game, where for the writers, they get to kind of utilize elements of their, not necessarily their personality, but the cadence of their voice, and know like how they deliver, whether it's a joke or a speech or a beat, and they can play into that. And everyone gets to know each other's dance moves and become like this more like machine that really just works so well together. And that's like the magic that I think is so fun to chase when you're making anything.
It's like it's like a band or it's like a sports team
Yeah.
that the teams that have played together a long time, like they just know I could pass it here and Hassan will go get it. Like
Yeah.
you just know everybody's tendencies, and I know like, oh, these two, that energy will be fun with them. Like it just makes everything. You just see it play out, so you just can keep getting better at it. So that's what's so fun to me about the idea of television and doing more of that, because it just feels, yeah, that constant discovery and honing is so fun.
Are you a TV guy or a film guy or like like I'm a TV person. Like if we were at one of those like game nights with like a trivia night, and if it was
Yeah.
movies, I'd be like, my team would be screwed. We might like, do not ask me anything unless it's a
Yeah.
rom-com. I'm so fucking predictable. But like but like
What's your
television, I'm
favorite?
in.
What's your
Favorite
favorite
what?
rom com?
Well, it's so my favorite rom-com is French Kiss with Meg Ryan and
Okay.
Kevin Kline, but you can
Okay.
only
Okay.
get it on DVD now. You can't stream that anywhere
Really?
either. Yeah, so maybe
Really?
you just need to put it out on DVD. I bought a DVD player for I ordered it all on Amazon.
I need to get one.
And
I need to get a DVD player too. This is all this streaming stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into, has made me really reappreciate physical media.
yes, yes. But it's funny because everything like TV looks so different now than it did even just 10 years ago, and the way that it's made. And I mean, it used to be like, for anyone in the industry, there would be pilot season where that it's
Right.
this concentrated period of time, that for anyone that's not in the industry, that was at the beginning of the year. Like all the
Mhm.
pitches would be going on towards the fall, and then you kind of get it into pilot season in the beginning of the year where they're casting, and then networks and studios would like cherry pick a bunch of TV shows to make one episode of it. And then whichever of those
Right.
episodes they wanted to get would end up on air that summer or that fall. And that
Right.
was it. And everyone,
Right.
but that's even a better way of like how people like creatives and writers and casting and everyone within the industry would know that there'd be more and more work coming up. Whereas now, I mean, even just hearing you describe that, from 2017 all the way up until 2020, it's like you have like a pitch that gets picked up, and it's like, how does anyone sustain anything? And that
Yeah.
all leads me back also to the writer's strike that's currently happening. And for
Yes.
a lot of people who aren't in the industry, who don't understand why suddenly the Writers Guild has decided to strike, and why TV is going to look different now, and everything's all thrown off, and why late night hosts don't know what to talk about, and The View is just making things up, which isn't that
Yeah, that's kind of
like,
that's the
they
fun. That's
basically
the
just
fun of
started.
watching.
That's
That's
the
the fun of
fun.
watching that show. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're just saying words.
When Whoopi Goldberg is going like, so I guess we have to talk about a Vanderpump Rules. I don't know what that means.
Boy, daytime TV is the best. It's because it feels like nobody is controlling anything. It's such a
No.
huge part. There's 24 hours a day, and it feels like a good 8 hours. They're just
Yeah.
saying shit. They're just throwing words out, just totally like unchecked. Nobody's producing anything. They're just turning the cameras on and just letting the View girls go. It's just like
Yep.
every
And
single
I
one of
love
those
it.
shows. I
I
love it.
love it. I want to know exactly what Whoopi Goldberg thinks of Tom Sandoval. But I actually want to know what, for you, getting
Yes.
back to what's important, not Backstreet
Yes.
Boys or
Yes. Yes.
Vanderpump Rules, but
Yes.
for you, like for your experience in these last couple of years of, especially not only just being a writer in a writer's room, but also head writer, head co-writer, head showrunner. Is there anything you want to say to anyone who doesn't understand what's going on, to maybe bring some clarity? Can you teach us all about the writer's strike? That's why I brought you
Sure.
here today.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a million issues that I think if you ask any writer, like, they're going to talk about the issue that has sort of impacted them. And there are ones who are at different levels who could probably speak to their issues better. But the ones I could definitely speak to, like, that I think people could like concretely understand is like, when we were growing up, like most TV shows that we watched had longer season orders. They would 22
Mhm.
episode seasons, or 16 or even 13. And now so many season orders, unless it's like a network show, like an Abbott or like a Law and Order or something, are going to be 8 episodes, 10 episodes, even 6. Like those are all the Emmy nominated shows. And so what happens because of that is writers have um, shorter jobs for a shorter amount of time. So writers spend more time in between these jobs. So writers spend more time looking for work that they can't find, and writers are less likely to earn enough to keep their health insurance. So, I mean, what's happening in writing is they're very much, it's all very late capitalist, like gig economy, like they're Ubering the field of writing. It's making it way more gig based and way more desperate to kind of scrap together living where there's like less than zero security. And because writers have more time in between these jobs, they're more dependent on residuals. And a huge amount of how we watch anything is through streaming. And the streaming residuals are much, much lower. And the streamers also are
Much,
very,
much lower.
much, much lower. And they also streamers very much lack transparency for how these shows are doing. They don't release that. They might release a PR statement for them saying like this show premiered to a big viewership when they want to like pat themselves on the back, but they're not concretely releasing in the way that a Seinfeld rerun, you could see like 1 million people watched Seinfeld on TBS. You can't do that with these shows on Hulu, on Netflix, on anything like that. So as a result, writers, showrunners like don't know how to renegotiate. You don't know. So many showrunners would be like, I don't know how my show is doing. Like there was a whole article about that in Vulture with showrunners being like, I have no idea how my show is doing because you don't know the viewership for any of it. You get shortchanged in the residuals of it all. The streamer thing to me, that's like one of the frustrating things is I feel like studios are still trying to act like streaming is like the last writer's strike happened 15 years ago, which
Yeah.
didn't impact me. I was a kid, so I was just watching Conan spin his wedding ring on the desk because he couldn't write any segments. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
He would do this funny, because he had no writers. So he'd be like, let's see how long I could spin my wedding ring on the desk. So we'd just spin in a circle for a while, But that was largely about the idea of like writers getting paid for content online. And like studios' argument then was like, well, we don't even know if you can make money on the internet, like something that obviously it's like nonsense, just complete insanity. And so this kind of is following that similar pattern of studios. It's funny because studios, on the one hand, they're telling writers like, look, streaming, it's just not profitable. We got to make cuts. But then on the other hand, are having these earnings calls and telling shareholders like, we're about to make $50 million this year from streaming. We're about to make, so they're telling investors how much money they're making and going to make, while at the same time crying poverty. So that's a couple aspects of it. And then a big one, a more existential one. And also feel free to jump in and cut me off or
No,
ask
I'm just going to
follow-ups
let
if
you
I start
keep on
babbling.
going.
Just keep babbling. A more existential one is the issue of AI and the use of AI.
Yeah.
And this is the one that bums me
Which is
out the
insane.
most. It's crazy, but it's also inevitable. And they're not engaging with it as a real thing, but they also know. So what writers have asked for, what the negotiating committee, which I'm not on, has asked for, and they've released all the like documents so you can see this online, is for studios to commit to not using AI technologies now or developed in the future for script writing or rewriting. And also to not, and to me, this is the more important one, to not use WGA registered scripts to feed AI to make it,
to teach it.
Which to me, that's the more like cynical or frustrating part to me, because it's like, look, if you can program a bot that's going to write the best scripts in the world, like go do it, fine. But they can't do that. So what they would have to do is give it The Godfather and Shawshank Redemption and When Harry Met Sally and all of these scripts, and then you're going to have a bot that spits out just kind of some amalgamed, it's just mass plagiarism machine. Like it's just going to kind of take all of this work from humans and spit out that. So this is the long-term concern. I don't believe there's the technology to do this now, but that is 1000%. It's only a couple chess moves ahead what that is going to be. So
Oh,
then, what is the risk of what could happen there is like they'll they'll give it a template and say like we want a rom-com with a Hemsworth on the moon or something, and then they'll have an AI write some like version of that, and then they'll hire a human writer and pay them like a day rate to come do like a human pass on this like templated script, and then they'll just film. So, that's speculative, but also
but
it is what's going to happen,
man,
but
that sounds terrible. That sounds awful.
right.
Which
And I
is
guess
why everyone, so that can't happen, obviously, which is why I'm very happy to see so many friends and my writer friends and showrunner friends all picketing and very much in support of the WGA.
for sure.
It's insane. I get asked so often about like, how do I become an actor? How do you like,
Yeah.
what is it like?
Yeah.
And especially after hearing everything that you've just said, have you had a lot of young, like, when you do encounter young writers or anyone who wants to like make their own show one day, like, what do you tell them about the business, especially the version of the business that you've experienced in the last couple of years, which is a very unique version. Like the little filming that I did in the last 2 years, I was like, this is a whole new book. Like this is
Right.
completely different.
For sure. Yeah, it's almost like the business side of it. Like for somebody just starting, I would almost have like no idea how to like advise them on that element of it. Um, but the thing that I do speak to when asked, and that I think is the only thing, I think it's just like however, like any way you can continue to create and
Yeah.
control your own stuff, that's the only stuff you have control of. We ultimately have no real control of whatever they're going to program the robots to do. We have no real control of a lot of they're going to do what they're going to do. And so all we can control, all I can control, all somebody starting can control is just to write, is just to, which sounds so annoying. I remember when I was starting comedy and I asked people for advice and they were like, "You just got to go do it." And I was like, I thought they were just being annoyed. I thought they were just withholding some answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's really just what it is. And I think a big part of it is also just like trusting what you think is funny or interesting, or when you're willing to put in the work and be bad at initially. Anything I've written, the first draft is always bad every single time, and I just slowly will chip away and try to make it less bad. And again, it's only upon doing that, like that's what I did with Flatbush, and that's what I've done with other stuff I have done or whatever, is just continue to chip away at it, and then having those things that I've made, just small independent things or some independent short. Like once those opportunities have come, they've been able to look at these small things I've done myself as proof that, you know, I'm not going to, I probably won't set their money on fire.
If you did have to have a robot do something for you for good, what kind of robot would you program for your
That's a really
personal
good,
life?
that's a really good
Now
question.
we're getting to the hard hitting questions.
That's really good. Um, it doesn't have to be a work thing. It could just be like anything in life.
Anything in life. The the Dan J. Perlman robot that you are programming.
It's very weird. It's very weird hearing your handle said aloud, but it's just because just because some Dan Perlman wouldn't give me the handle.
What is your middle name?
Joseph,
Yeah.
here's my cat.
Hello, Crimmins.
I'd have a robot take you away. No, I'm teasing. No, I always find it the smallest things in housework. Like I feel like it's whenever I'm at the 2 yard line of finishing some housework or some chore, that's when I get the most like, man, I don't want to do this. So it's like if I do laundry, like putting the clothes away, or when I take out the trash, putting new trash bags in the thing. Something about being like so close to being done. Like I've done most of the work, but just being on that 5 yard line. Like whenever I'm like heading home or something and I'm like 2 blocks from home, that's when I'm the most like irritated. I'm just like, oh
Over
my
it.
God, I just want to be home. I'm so over it. Yes, 100%. So something, if there's a robot that could like guide me through just a, like a running back, you just hand it off to, and they could just
Uh-huh.
like barrel in.
A little relay
Well,
robot.
exactly. What would you use yours for?
Cardboard boxes. It would
Like
break down
breaking them
cardboard
down?
boxes. Yes.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's it. Just that's it.
That's
Doesn't do anything else.
I know
Just
that's Candice's cardboard box robot. No, he works all day. Yeah.
it gets to charge the rest of the time. It's a
Yeah.
very simple existence.
Just charge
That's
up.
it.
Yeah. That's a cool
Just has
gig.
like
Yeah.
scissor hands. Yeah.
I very much support that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe that'll be my next gig. We'll see how
Your
long
next
this writer
project.
strike happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. I would
Oh,
chat
of
your ear
course.
off all afternoon. But I want to leave with 5 more questions, just 5 simple
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
It's like a little word association, a little conversation cool down. First
Okay.
thing that pops into your head. It can be a sentence as well.
Okay.
But can you please tell us something that you like?
The first thing that pops in my head. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
getting
Yes.
the hang of it.
What was in your
Um,
head? What popped in there?
the first thing that popped into my head was there's a place near me where I get like an egg wrap, and just something about it's just the most basic thing, but something about how they do it at this deli. I just like it, and I think I didn't get it today, and that's why it popped into my head.
Is it an egg salad wrap? Is it like a
No,
scrambled egg wrap?
it's like egg. Those little egg white, mushroom, tomato. It's
Interesting.
and just like a nice healthy thing, but it just feels like a good energizing thing. I would not again without having thought. I would choose other things that I like in the world, but you're asking what the first thing that popped into my head was, and it was that.
That was
So
the
whatever that
assignment. Okay.
means.
Yes.
Okay, I
I
can't. I
I
wouldn't say I would. I wouldn't say I would like really double down on this under close scrutiny, but
like that's gonna
that
be part
is
of your resume. Like a very
yeah.
important thing about
Yeah, my
on your writer.
strengths.
I
Sorry,
too
that's
am an
just what I
egg
was thinking
right.
about.
No. I eat the unhealthy version. Well, maybe I shouldn't say
Yeah.
unhealthy, like from Starbucks, but it
Hmm.
is that version, and I get it double
Oh,
toasted, which they call
I
DT,
have I have had that one, and that one's
the
very
egg
good
white
too.
spinach feta wrap. Yeah, but if you
Yes,
DT double toast, it is
I had that.
delicious.
I had that in LA, and that became a go to when I was living near a Starbucks.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Something that you know.
I'm not sure I know anything. Um, I know. Well, okay, this is a random thing that I just learned. I was in uh, Las Vegas this weekend. A friend had a bachelor party. I'd never been to Las Vegas before. He really wanted to see a David Blaine magic show. I don't know why. He's seen him multiple times. So this is what we ended up doing. Anyway, so he holds his breath underwater. This is the big finish, right? And so now I know the world record for underwater breath holding, which is
Which is
24 minutes. 24 minutes.
wow, from David
Some
Blaine.
no, David Blaine, the most he did was 17 minutes. And so I don't want to say he's bad at what he does, but I will say he's not the best. That some Serbian guy is a little better at that.
Did you get to meet him?
I did not get to meet him, no.
Okay.
I
I was going to say, did you get invited to the secret island? There's like an island.
Is there an island? Is there a secret Blaine Island? Wait, tell me what you know. It
No,
sounds like what you know is
that's
more
all I got.
interesting
That's
than
all
I
I
know.
got.
Oh boy, there's something interesting
Okay.
going on there.
Something that you hate.
The trash bag thing I was talking about, just being so
Trash
close to
bags.
the edge there.
Okay. Fair. Something that you love that is not friends or family, but that like you love.
I like the two things that popped into my head was I very much like whenever I take a walk, whenever I'm getting frustrated writing or whatever, and I take a walk in like a park or some greenery area, and it's even somewhat nice, I'm in just a much, much better mood. And so something about the greenery and trees and small escape, I think, always makes me much less grumbly, And basketball
And
was the other thing. I'll play basketball a couple days a week, and I love that too. Yeah.
Do you think about the doctor whenever you're playing? You're like score point. You're like, fuck you, doctor. I am a basketball player.
I definitely imagine. I'm just like dunking, and I'm like, fuck you, Dr. Skog. And he's like, what? You're like, what are you talking about?
Was his name Dr. Skog?
I feel like it might have been. If it was not, and I just called out a random doctor, I apologize. But if it was you, I meant that.
Okay, and last but not least, a quirky little fact about you.
No, she's the first pet I've had until I was a kid. Once, when I was a kid, I had a frog. My parents didn't want to get me. I wanted a dog or a cat, but they said they were allergic. They were not allergic. It's just a smart excuse to say, because you're not going to I'm not going to get you tested. I'm just going to believe it, And so they got me a frog. So I had a frog. It was like, it came in a Ziploc bag in the mail. And
in the mail? How do you mail a frog?
You just put it in the mailbox and then let them take it,
Yeah. So.
But
did your frog have a name?
Well, so there were two of them. One of them was I called Spooky, and the other one was just the Frog, because I couldn't think of another name. And then they're like, well, you don't have to name it until you think of one. And then I just moved on to other things, so I just never thought of one. Anyway, that was the one that lived until I was maybe 21 or so. It lived like 16 years.
Seriously? Mm-hmm. Frogs live that long?
I think certain ones, like the really strong ones, do. Probably like the 24-minute breath hold version of them. Like the ones that really, like the real champions. But yes, so that's a fun fact that very few people know or care about.
Well, like your frog, Dan, I believe you are one of the champions, and
you always say that.
So I close out every.
you had that outro planned, no matter what I said.
Thank you so much for hanging. Thank you for talking about Flatbush misdemeanors, and I really do look forward to when I can stream it. We can all stream it once again, and more importantly, the other side of this writer strike, whatever you have that you've been working on, because it's going to be fantastic. But big fan over here.
Much.
So
this was very fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yay! Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who goes and rates and reviews this podcast. It means a lot. It immediately shows us what you're liking about the podcast. It's a wonderful way to support the podcast. So if you haven't already, give us a shout. Give me a shout. I want to say thank you to Allie B. You said it feels real and honest. You said, it said in the title, these episodes always feel real and honest, which is one of the reasons you enjoy listening. Thank you so much. It means the world. I want to say also thank you to Danny Ham. You recently posted a review saying that that you feel this podcast is a joy and that you enjoy the insightful conversations that I have with my guest, and that you love my Coke brew conversations. They're cold brew conversations, two very different substances, two very different uppers. I just want to point that out. So it is cold brew, but but this made me laugh, so I just wanted to share that. I think you meant to say cold brew, but it really gave me a giggle that you wrote Coke brew conversations. But my cold brew conversations, you enjoy them. You look forward to them every week. Thank you so much. I look forward to recording them every week. I feel like it's a really personal way I get to interact with you guys. So if you have an opportunity, please take a moment, go rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to it. I would love to give you a shout out, as well as head over to my socials on @Superbloom. Send me your questions. Send me some life advice that you're looking for, a dilemma, a precarious situation that you're trying to navigate. And I would love to give you a shout out on my Monday morning cold brew conversations and try to help you out. while I'm super caffeinated on multiple cups of cold brew, because that's how I roll. That's how I kick off my week. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Take care. This has been a Superbloom podcast, hosted by me, Candice King, produced by Melissa D. Montz and Diamond Imprint Productions, and advertisement partnerships with Acast.